Adam Silver is tired of the games and tired of the lies with none other than WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert.
The basketball world just witnessed a power shift that no one saw coming. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, has officially stepped into WNBA territory. And his latest move has quietly ended Cathy Engelbert's reign as commissioner. For years, Engelbert painted herself as the architect behind the league's growth. But behind closed doors, frustration had been brewing.
He definitely is making waves and trying to possibly get none other than Cathy Engelbert up out of here.
Silver's patience finally snapped after years of inflated numbers, PR spin, and questionable leadership decisions that left sponsors uneasy and players restless. His new global expansion plan, reportedly forming a joint structure that places both leagues under one operational vision, has effectively stripped Engelbert of her control. What was once her empire is now being restructured from the inside out, with Silver's fingerprints all over it. And the moment he made it official, Cathy Engelbert's fury became impossible to hide. But what exactly pushed Silver to end her WNBA career this way?
Now, we know Cathy has been on record time and time again stating that, she has been single-handedly the growth of the WNBA. Let's not forget, she sold 16% of this company, and now they're kind of faking the numbers and viewership as well.
For years, Adam Silver stood on the sidelines of the WNBA, letting Cathy Engelbert handle the league's day-to-day chaos. He played the quiet overseer, watching her navigate controversies, financial missteps, and public spin about record-breaking growth. But recently, that calm exterior cracked. Behind the scenes, reports began to surface that Silver had grown tired of the constant exaggerations and internal disorganization. Sponsors were complaining about inconsistent audience data. Networks were privately admitting that the historic numbers didn't line up with what was really happening on air. And players were growing restless with how leadership was handling the new wave of attention brought by Caitlin Clark.
This article right here is going viral. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver says, "We love to bring a WNBA game to China." Now, there is no "we love to bring a WNBA game to China." Adam Silver said, "We love to bring Caitlin to China, bruh."
Silver, known for his measured and strategic style, doesn't lose his cool easily. But when he does, it means change is coming. The breaking point came after a string of miscalculations that made the WNBA look unstable just when it should have been thriving. The tipping issue. Engelbert's insistence that the league's success was purely the result of her business leadership. Silver knew better. The truth was that Caitlin Clark's arrival had single-handedly transformed the WNBA's visibility. Yet Engelbert continued to present herself as the reason for the boom.
Now, this is something that has been getting talked about. Instead, there was no growth before Caitlin Clark was there. A long-term plateau around 55,000. They finally broke through when CC captivated the nation in 2023 with her junior year campaign, which posted sky-high ratings. All the new fans she's created decided they wanted to see her more hoop.
That false narrative, combined with questionable financial moves like the sale of a league stake to outside investors, finally convinced Silver that it was time to step in. Sources close to the NBA office described Silver's tone in recent meetings as final. He didn't want excuses. He wanted control. What started as a subtle review of Engelbert's leadership evolved into a quiet restructuring of power. Silver had already begun to form partnerships overseas, working on a plan that would connect the NBA's global infrastructure directly with the WNBA's branding and operations.
It's interesting. We announced a partnership with the Chinese Basketball Association today. They have a league here that's known as the CBA, and they also run the national team. And when we have this new rookie on the Portland Trailblazers, Young Hansen, in the league, they know they need to continue to generate more high-quality players, men and women, and it goes to the quality of their youth program, the quality of their training. So we entered into a partnership with them, and we've had partnerships in the past.
This wasn't just about collaboration. It was about alignment, meaning the WNBA would no longer be managed as an independent experiment, but as part of the NBA's larger ecosystem. The moment this plan surfaced, insiders knew what it meant for Engelbert. Her authority was finished. She might still hold the title of commissioner, but the real decisions had moved above her. The WNBA's future, its contracts, its media deals, its sponsorships was now being negotiated directly through Silver's office. That was the final blow.
When might we see a WNBA game here?
I actually hope for very soon. You know, we have to get through a new collective bargaining agreement with our players. That's for another discussion. But once we do, there's so much interest in women's basketball here. It didn't used to be the case in the old days, and now everywhere I go, just in the United States, people want to talk about the WNBA now, and it's great. They want to talk about women's basketball here, and I think we'd love to bring a WNBA game to Macau or to mainland China.
Engelbert reportedly tried to push back, emphasizing her vision for women's basketball. But Silver had already lost faith. Too many missteps, too much self-promotion, and far too little accountability. He wasn't going to let another season be defined by confusion and controversy. The message from Silver's camp was clear: the NBA is taking over. That single decision sent shockwaves across both leagues. For the first time, the WNBA's structure was being rewritten, not by its own leadership, but by the man who runs the NBA itself. The balance of power had officially shifted, and Cathy Engelbert found herself standing on the outside of the empire she thought she controlled.
For all these people, and Cathy saying that she was simply responsible for the growth is rhetorical. Mike stated, "I was told the league was growing. Based on this, it seems the WNBA was just recovering lost fans from a while ago, at least before Caitlin Clark came along." Guys, Caitlin Clark is growth. That's why this whole thing right here, this whole Chinese thing, is because of Caitlin.
When news broke that Adam Silver was preparing a new league operations plan, most fans assumed it was about marketing or expansion. But insiders quickly realized this was something far bigger: a silent takeover. Silver's plan wasn't just about improving the WNBA, it was about merging its operations into the NBA's existing global framework, effectively putting both leagues under one vision, one structure, and one leader. For Cathy Engelbert, that meant her power was gone before she even knew it. What looked like a collaboration on paper was, in reality, a full-scale transition of authority. Silver's move came at the perfect time. The WNBA was facing a credibility crisis. Public trust had been shaken by accusations of inflated viewership, questionable sponsorship numbers, and internal disputes about player treatment. Engelbert had built her reputation on growth metrics that couldn't hold up under scrutiny. Once Silver's office started reviewing the numbers, it became clear that the supposed record seasons weren't as strong as they appeared. A major source close to league operations said Silver viewed the league's structure as outdated, reactive, and poorly aligned with the modern sports economy. The takeover plan was strategic and subtle. Instead of announcing an overthrow, Silver began introducing integration measures: joint committees, shared analytics departments, cross-league media projects, and unified branding initiatives that blurred the lines between the NBA and WNBA. On the surface, it sounded progressive, but within executive circles, everyone knew what it meant. Silver was centralizing control. He wanted the WNBA to benefit from the NBA's infrastructure, yes, but he also wanted oversight of every major decision. That included sponsorships, international partnerships, media negotiations, and even player promotion strategies. For Engelbert, this was devastating. Her job depended on autonomy, the ability to make independent decisions about the league's direction. But once Silver's plan went into effect, she became more of a figurehead than a commissioner. Meetings that used to go through her were now rerouted to NBA executives. Budget allocations required approval from Silver's finance team. Even branding choices were suddenly subject to NBA review. The WNBA was no longer standing on its own. It had become an extension of a much larger operation, and the timing couldn't have been worse for Engelbert. Caitlin Clark's global appeal had given the league its most powerful marketing tool in decades, and Silver wasn't about to let Engelbert mismanage it. His new plan centered around maximizing Clark's influences, expanding into international markets, launching cross-league partnerships, and leveraging NBA sponsors to elevate women's basketball worldwide. It was a blueprint for a new era, but it came at the cost of Engelbert's authority. In the end, what Silver built wasn't just a new management structure, it was a quiet revolution. The WNBA was now being guided by the same playbook that made the NBA a global empire. Engelbert could either accept her new ceremonial role or step aside entirely. Either way, the message was clear. The league's future no longer belonged to her. Cathy Engelbert had spent years shaping her image as the visionary who rescued the WNBA from obscurity. She spoke at conferences, gave interviews about leadership, and constantly reminded the public that she had transformed the league's business model. But once Adam Silver's takeover plan became public knowledge by Caitlin Clark's arrival, the uncomfortable truth was that the league's sudden surge in popularity didn't come from clever management. It came from one player who captured the nation's attention as the numbers were re-examined. The cracks in Engelbert's narrative became impossible to ignore. Reports revealed that viewership before Caitlin Clark's rise had been flat for years. Merchandise sales, sponsorship deals, and media coverage all lagged behind expectations. Yet Engelbert had continued to present herself as the mastermind behind the so-called WNBA boom. Adam Silver, known for his precision and data-driven decisions, was not impressed. He saw a commissioner more focused on public image. Frustration boiled over during an internal strategy session. Multiple staffers described Engelbert as visibly shaken, insisting that her authority was being undermined. But no one dared to challenge Silver's decisions, not when the NBA was offering the financial backing the WNBA desperately needed. One executive summarized it perfectly. Cathy wanted to control the narrative, but Silver controlled the money. Publicly, Engelbert tried to maintain her composure. She appeared in interviews praising Silver's support for women's sports, but the tension was obvious. The more Silver spoke about the league's future, the less her name came up. Even WNBA players began noticing the shift. Social media posts that once tagged Engelbert as the face of progress now focused entirely on Adam Silver's leadership and Caitlin Clark's SUPERSTARDOM. By the time Silver announced the integration plan between the NBA and WNBA, Engelbert's influence had already vanished. Her office had become a quiet corner in a machine she no longer controlled. The league that once revolved around her press conferences was now orbiting a different force, one that was global, data-driven, and unapologetically focused on market power. For Engelbert, the message was clear. The era she built was ending, and she was powerless to stop it. But the next move Silver made would show just how final that ending truly was. Adam Silver's plan to reshape the WNBA wasn't born overnight. It was a calculated move years in the making, driven by his vision of turning basketball, both men's and women's, into a unified global powerhouse. For too long, the WNBA had operated as a separate branch with limited resources, inconsistent marketing, and leadership that prioritized appearances over progress. Silver saw an opportunity not just to fix it, but to rebuild it entirely. His strategy centered around one thing: integration. By aligning the WNBA with the NBA's global network, Silver would eliminate the inefficiencies that had held women's basketball back for decades. The first phase of his plan involved data. Silver's team began collecting real analytics from media partners, advertisers, and international broadcasters. What they found shocked even longtime insiders. Nearly 70% of the league's growth in the past 2 years was directly tied to Caitlin Clark's emergence. Every major rating spike, every surge in merchandise, every sold-out game, all connected to her. That meant the league's entire business model was sitting on a single player's shoulders. To Silver, that wasn't a weakness. It was leverage. He understood that Caitlin Clark wasn't just a player. She was a brand capable of bridging global markets. If the NBA could use stars like LeBron James and Stephen Curry to build basketball's global appeal, then the WNBA could do the same with Clark. Silver's master plan was to replicate the NBA's playbook, build superstars into global icons, create international tours, and expand broadcasting deals beyond the United States. That's why discussions about a WNBA game in China weren't random. They were the first public signal of his larger blueprint. Meanwhile, Engelbert was being quietly pushed out of every key decision. Silver's communications team began handling sponsor negotiations, while NBA marketing executives took over global partnerships. Even social media strategy, something Engelbert had once personally overseen, was now under NBA review. What was once her league had become an extension of Silver's empire. And the more the NBA got involved, the smoother things started running. Sponsors began re-engaging, global networks opened talks, and new investors expressed interest in long-term funding took outsiders. It looked like Silver was rescuing the WNBA, To insiders, it was a corporate chess game, and Engelbert had already been checkmated. Every move Silver made seemed designed to tighten his control, not out of ego, but out of purpose. He wanted the WNBA to stand tall on the global stage, not as a struggling sibling of the NBA, but as its equal in ambition and reach. By the time the media started catching on, the transformation was already underway. The WNBA's structure, leadership, and financial systems were now operating under NBA oversight. Engelbert's signature was still on the commissioner's line, but her authority had been erased. Silver's master plan wasn't just about power, it was about permanence. The WNBA would never again be the same, and neither would Cathy Engelbert's career. The moment Adam Silver mentioned the idea of bringing the WNBA to China, the sports world paused. To most fans, it sounded like a simple expansion idea. But to those following the behind-the-scenes power struggle, it was a declaration of dominance. Silver wasn't just talking about staging a friendly game overseas. He was building the next phase of his takeover, a new global market pipeline that would cement the NBA's control over the WNBA's future. And the centerpiece of that move was Caitlin Clark. Silver understood that international markets don't respond to league politics, they respond to stars. China already had a massive basketball fan base, built through years of NBA exposure, but it lacked a defining female icon. Silver saw that opening and moved quickly. He quietly began coordinating with Chinese sports authorities to host a major WNBA showcase featuring the Indiana Fever, the team driving most of the league's global attention. On the surface, it was a goodwill gesture. In reality, it was Silver positioning the WNBA under his global infrastructure while sidelining Cathy Engelbert entirely. Who once boasted about her corporate partnerships and international outreach, had no role in this deal. The talks, sponsorships, and logistics were all handled by Silver's office. The Chinese partnership represented something Engelbert had always struggled to achieve: legitimacy on a global scale. Silver's access to media rights, advertising networks, and long-term foreign sponsorships gave him complete control over the narrative. The WNBA was no longer just an American league. It was a product under the NBA's brand identity. Behind the scenes, Engelbert was reportedly furious. Sources described her as blindsided when she learned about the deal through internal memos rather than direct communication. She had been reduced to an observer while Silver's plan unfolded across international headlines. Yet she couldn't publicly oppose it. Doing so would make her look like she was standing in the way of progress. Silver had played it perfectly. He turned global expansion into a PR shield for his power grab. The move also revealed Silver's deeper intent. He was crafting a new collective bargaining framework that would include potential partnerships with foreign leagues. This meant the NBA could use its global platform to develop women's basketball programs, talent exchanges, and sponsorship deals directly, all without needing Engelbert's approval. In business terms, he had cut her out of the supply chain. As news spread that Chinese broadcasters were eager to feature Caitlin Clark, sponsors flooded in. Suddenly, the same corporations that once hesitated to invest in the WNBA were competing for ad slots tied to the China tours. Silver's bet had paid off, and Engelbert's last bargaining chip, her control over league growth, evaporated overnight. The China connection was more than a marketing victory. It was a turning point that proved Adam Silver could do in months what Engelbert couldn't accomplish in years. And from that moment on, the WNBA was no longer Cathy's vision. It was Silver's global empire in motion. If Adam Silver was the architect of the WNBA's transformation, then Caitlin Clark was the foundation it stood on. Every major move Silver made, every partnership, every broadcast deal, every overseas expansion was built around her meteoric rise. To him, Caitlin wasn't just a player. She was a once-in-a-generation phenomenon who could finally bridge the gap between the NBA's global brand and the WNBA's underdeveloped market. Her influence had already redefined American sports viewership. Now, Silver was ready to make her the face of women's basketball. Worldwide, Clark's journey from college superstar to professional game-changer happened faster than anyone expected. Her ability to draw massive crowds, spike ratings, and dominate highlight reels turned her into the most valuable player the WNBA had ever seen, both on and off the court. Fans who had never watched a women's basketball game before were suddenly tuning in by the millions. Her jersey sales broke league records, and her name trended globally after nearly every performance. For Silver, this wasn't just success. It was proof that the WNBA had finally found its global ambassador. Behind the scenes, Silver's marketing team began crafting a new identity for the league centered on Clark's appeal. They positioned her as the embodiment of modern basketball: confidence, talent, and cross-generational influence. Her presence attracted major sponsors who had previously ignored the WNBA, from global brands in tech and fashion to international streaming services, eager to air her games. Every metric pointed to one conclusion: Caitlin Clark was bigger than the league itself, and that realization terrified Cathy Engelbert. For years, she'd controlled the narrative, deciding which players received spotlight treatment and which stories dominated the league's messaging. But Silver's takeover shifted all that power away from her. Under his direction, every major promotional effort revolved around Clark's image. Commercials, interviews, and press releases were designed to highlight her connection to the NBA's legacy and the future of women's sports. Engelbert's influence in those decisions had vanished. The more the spotlight grew on Caitlin, the smaller Engelbert's role appeared. Media outlets stopped asking about her leadership and instead focused on Silver's global initiatives. Even within the WNBA offices, staff began referring to Clark as the face of the Silver era. That phrase spread quickly, and soon players were openly acknowledging the change in tone. The old corporate structure that Engelbert once ruled was now being driven by a singular star and a commissioner who understood her market power. By the time Clark's name appeared in discussions about international exhibitions and cross-league branding deals, Engelbert knew her fate was sealed. The league no longer needed her. Narrative It had Clark's. The fans, the sponsors, and even the networks had aligned behind one vision: the global rise of Caitlin Clark. And while Silver's empire continued to expand, Engelbert's legacy was fading into the background, replaced by a new era led by the player she once claimed to have built the league around. By the time Adam Silver's global takeover plan was fully in motion, Cathy Engelbert had one choice left: fight for her position, or quietly fade away. And if there's one thing she refused to do, it was leave without a fight. Inside the Manhattan headquarters, whispers of her frustration had turned into open defiance. Engelbert began calling emergency meetings, demanding updates from executives who now reported directly to NBA management. But it was too late. The flow of information had already bypassed her. The power she once wielded was now sitting in Silver's office. In private conversations with allies, Engelbert reportedly accused Silver of overstepping and trying to rewrite history. She wanted the world to believe that the WNBA's success, the sponsorships, the visibility, the fan growth, had all been built on her leadership. But those same sponsors she claimed guaranteed international exposure. Desperate to reclaim her footing, Engelbert began preparing a public relations push. Her plan was to release a series of statements emphasizing her role in laying the foundation for the WNBA's expansion. She scheduled interviews, drafted speeches, and planned to frame Silver's takeover as a collaboration rather than a hostile transition. But the timing worked against her. Each time she tried to make her case, Silver announced another move that overshadowed her narrative: new sponsorships, expanded media rights, and partnerships with international basketball federations. Engelbert couldn't compete with momentum that large. Inside league circles, the tone had shifted. Discussion. Silver presented a full operational alignment proposal that would bring all league decisions under NBA governance. Engelbert sat in silence as he outlined the details. Every major point: media rights, player representation, financial structure, was already approved. When the presentation ended, applause broke out. Engelbert didn't join in. Her face, once confident and composed, showed what everyone in the room already knew: her time was over. Within days, the headlines told the story she had tried to avoid. Adam Silver leads new era of women's basketball. Her name was barely mentioned. All that remained of her tenure was a legacy buried beneath Silver's success. Engelbert had fought hard, but the battle for control was never equal. The empire she built now belonged to someone else, had become the final chapter in the WNBA's rebirth. As the dust settled, it became clear that the WNBA was no longer the same league it had been under Cathy Engelbert's rule. Adam Silver's influence had restructured everything from how the league was marketed to how it operated on a global stage. The walls separating the NBA and WNBA had been torn down, replaced with a unified system that mirrored Silver's grand vision: one basketball empire, driven by both men's and women's superstars, powered by a single corporate engine. For the first time in decades, women's basketball wasn't being treated as a separate experiment, it was being integrated into the world's biggest sports brand. The results came fast. Sponsorship revenue tripled within months as global brands lined up to associate with the new WNBA identity. Networks that had once hesitated to broadcast games began competing for airtime, knowing that every Caitlin Clark matchup brought record-breaking engagement. The China Initiative became the cornerstone of Silver's international campaign. Packed arenas in Macau and Beijing showcased what Engelbert could never achieve: true global demand. When footage of young Chinese fans wearing Caitlin Clark jerseys flooded social media, it became official the WNBA had gone worldwide. Silver didn't stop there. He initiated joint media programs featuring NBA and WNBA athletes side by side, highlighting their shared commitment to growing the sport. Collaborative charity games, global youth programs, and cross-branding campaigns helped merge fan bases that once existed in separate worlds. For sponsors and media executives, it was the perfect model and inclusive, globalized basketball ecosystem that reached every corner of the market. Meanwhile, Cathy Engelbert's presence faded into silence. Her final press appearances were brief and scripted, filled with vague references to leadership transitions and organizational collaboration. Insiders revealed she had been offered an advisory position, a symbolic gesture meant to preserve dignity while removing her from real influence. She accepted quietly, perhaps recognizing that the fight was unwinnable. In contrast, Silver's image soared. Sports analysts hailed him as a visionary who understood that women's basketball needed structure, not slogans. His ability to merge innovation with opportunity created something that felt fresh and unstoppable. The media dubbed it the Silver Era, a time when women's basketball finally stood shoulder to shoulder with the men's game, no longer as a charity case, but as a global product with equal footing in marketing, coverage, and respect. For players, especially Caitlin Clark, it was the dawn of something extraordinary. They were no longer fighting for visibility, they had it. They weren't begging for sponsorships, they had companies chasing them. The WNBA's story had evolved from a struggling league into a movement that transcended borders. In the end, Silver didn't just end Cathy Engelbert's career. He redefined what women's basketball could be. The old system of excuses and inflated numbers was gone. What replaced it was a global vision fueled by real demand, undeniable talent, and a commissioner who turned frustration into transformation. The Silver Era had begun and the world was watching. Cathy Engelbert's fall wasn't sudden, it was inevitable. Years of inflated claims and limited progress had left the WNBA vulnerable, and Adam Silver seized that moment to rebuild it into something greater. His global vision, powered by Caitlin Clark's star presence, shifted women's basketball from a niche league into a worldwide brand. Engelbert's frustration became the symbol of an old system that could no longer keep up with modern demand. Silver's takeover wasn't just a leadership change. It was a full-scale transformation that united the NBA and WNBA under one future. For the first time, women's basketball had the infrastructure, attention, and star power it always deserved. The message was clear. The Silver Era isn't coming, it's already here. And while Engelbert's chapter is over, the story of global basketball has only just begun.